The dust on Velis 9 didn't settle. It shimmered, fine and silver, floating like ghost ash over cracked domes and half-buried machines. The moonscape had once been rich with hydro mines and oxygen farms. Now it was a graveyard of promises. And Callum Virek was just another scavenger chasing. Ghosts. His boots crunched over, fractured glass soil as he climbed a rusted power conduit toward the broken edge of the biodome. The light was sharp here, casting long, jagged shadows. His oxygen readout blinked yellow, but he didn't slow down. That's when he saw her, collapsed at the edge of the canyon, beside a busted rover frame, was a figure wrapped in the tattered remains of noble stitched thermoweave, a cloak half covered in ash and frostbite dust. Her skin was translucent violet, her body gaunt, her breathing shallow. One hand clutched her side. The other pressed to the dirt like it could still hold dignity there. Callum froze. She wasn't from the wastelands. Not one of the junkers or traders who passed through Velis 9's corpse. No, this was someone once royal, or close to it. And judging by the scorched insignia still etched on her shoulder strap, he already knew her name. He stepped closer and slowly knelt, removing the last vacuum-sealed protein ration from his belt. It crackled as he unwrapped it. Her eyes opened. Dim, burning, defiant. "I don't need your mercy," she rasped. Callum blinked. Her voice was shredded by dehydration, but it cut sharper than any vibroblade. He held the ration out anyway. "You need to eat." "I need to die with my name," she said, and tried to push herself up, but collapsed into a cough that made her whole frame shudder. For a moment he hesitated. Her pride was almost palpable, like a field around her, like a firewall set to repel anything that resembled pity. Callum had seen men die with less honor in their veins. But then again, he wasn't here to judge. "I'm not here to save anyone," he said. Just passing through. He placed the ration beside her hand. Not touching her. Not looking away. She didn't respond, but she didn't throw it either. He turned to leave. Then her whisper came, barely audible against the wind sweeping through the cracked terrain. "You said passing through." Callum paused. Yes, her gaze fixed on the horizon beyond the ruined colony. Her voice was thin, but steel ran through it. "Then you'll die out here too." Callum looked down at her. Really looked now. That's when it clicked. The face, the defiance, the half-burned insignia on her gear. She wasn't just some starving castaway. She was Astra Velan, daughter of High House Velan, one of the founding families of the Outer Moons. And if the old rebel logs were true, her father had once saved Callum's life during the Titan Drift Wars. "You're Astra," he said slowly. Her eyes flickered again. Pain, recognition, then fury. "Why does that matter?" "Because your father was the only one who believed I wasn't a criminal when the system marked me one." A long pause. Then, "He died believing truth mattered." Look where that got him. Callum didn't answer, but something in the weight of her silence told him this wasn't just a fallen noble. This was a woman who had been betrayed, exiled, and marked for extinction. Not by fate, but by someone who feared her enough to erase her. A shadow moved on the horizon. A thin hover trail, not from his own ship. Callum's hand moved to his sidearm. "We need to move," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere. You don't have a choice." "No," she said. Her voice cracked but sharp. "You don't." The buzz of approaching skiffs grew louder. Engines not built for transport, but enforcement. And suddenly Callum knew. She wasn't alone out here because she got lost. She was left here. Left to die. And now the ones who left her were coming to make sure the job was finished. Callum stood tall. "Then let's give them something they didn't expect." Astra stared at him like he was the last fool in the galaxy. But she didn't tell him to run. Not yet. The wind on Velis 9 shifted. Callum heard it before he saw them. The low hum of grav skiffs approaching across the dead flats, carried by heat distortion and distant pulse-light shimmer. At first just shadows, then outlines, 3 skiffs, armed, fast. He looked down at Astra. Her fingers gripped the edge of the ration pack but hadn't opened it. Her lips were pale, her breathing ragged, but it was her eyes that struck him most. They weren't afraid. They were burning, They found me, she murmured. I told you to leave. No, he said. You didn't. Callum crouched beside her and pulled a micro-injector from his belt pouch, a hydration stim, barely enough to stabilize her vitals. This will help, she tried to push it away. He didn't let her. You want to make them pay? He said, locking eyes with her. Then live, she didn't argue. He pressed the stim to her neck. It hissed. Her muscles tensed and then eased, just enough to keep her upright. The skiffs closed in fast. Dust clouds bloomed behind them like fire smoke. Callum stood. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He hadn't drawn a weapon in nearly 6 years. But something about this place, this moment, pulled him back to the man he used to be, the one who believed standing alone was better than kneeling together. He shifted, stepping between Astra and the oncoming vehicles. Tell me who they are, he said without turning. Astra's voice was hoarse, but sure. The one leading them is Commander Voss, used to work in atmospheric allocations. My father gave him a seat at the table. Voss wanted the whole table instead. Callum nodded grimly. He knew the type. The skiffs braked in unison and hovered above the cracked dirt. From the largest stepped a tall man in imperial gray, exosuit gleaming, command stripes repainted in black. His face was once handsome. Now it was pinched, twisted by power left unchecked. Commander Voss. Well, well, Voss said as he approached, voice casual, cruel. Still breathing, are we, Princess? Callum didn't move. Back on your ship, Voss chuckled. And who are you? Another desperate soul-playing hero? Or just a scavenger who doesn't know who he's standing in front of? Doesn't matter, Callum replied. She's not yours. Voss's expression flickered, surprise then delight. Ah, rebellion. It's been a while since someone spoke to me like that. He circled slowly, flanked by 2 armed guards. You know who she is, don't you? The traitor heiress. Killed a man over oxygen credits, staged a reactor accident, left her own people to die. Behind him, Astra's breath hitched, not in shock, in resignation. Like she'd heard these lies so many times they'd become a second skin. Callum didn't turn to her. He didn't have to. She didn't kill anyone, he said calmly. But you did. Voss's jaw tightened. You sure about that, scavenger? Because I've got signed charges, witnesses, system records, Callum shrugged. Funny thing about records. They can be forged, witnesses bought. But people know when they're being lied to. Deep down they always know. The silence that followed cracked tension in the air. Then Astra's voice rang out. Hoarse but clear. You couldn't erase me. Voss, you couldn't kill my name so you buried it. You left me to rot in the wastes like trash. Voss turned slowly toward her, venom coiled in every line of his face. You were trash the moment your father refused my offer. I gave him a chance to join us, to expand. He laughed in my face, Astra's fists clenched. He had integrity. That's what you call weakness. No, Voss hissed, stepping closer. That's what I call leverage. And now look at you, starving, forgotten, crawling in the dust while I rule your legacy. He leaned in close, inches from her. You're already dead. Astra, you just haven't stopped breathing yet. Callum moved between them without a word. A long pause. The mercs behind Voss tensed, but didn't fire. Callum met Voss's stare without flinching. Then why are you still talking? He said. Voss straightened. You'll regret this. No, Callum replied. But you might. Something shifted then. Not in Voss. In his men. One of them, younger, unsure, flicked his gaze between Callum and Astra, then away from Voss. Just for a second. Callum saw it. So did Astra. To doubt. Voss waved a dismissive hand. Let them die out here. The sun will finish what we started. Then they turned back to their skiffs. As the engines kicked up dust, Astra leaned weakly toward Callum. You shouldn't have done that. I didn't do it for you. He lied. She didn't smile, but her hand touched the ration beside her. Not eating yet, but not rejecting it anymore either. They moved slowly, Callum helping her toward a half-collapsed oxygen shelter carved into a cliffside. Inside was shade, half-functioning vents, and a few broken-down consoles. Enough to hide. Callum propped her against the wall, checked her vitals, then handed her water from his own pack. She drank this time, silent, bitter, but alive. You still think I should have walked away? he asked. Her eyes searched him. You knew my father. I did, he said. He gave me a job when I was marked as a deserter. He put a tool in my hand and told me to build something. It saved me, she looked away. Then he never saw me like this. No, Callum said, but I think he'd still believe you weren't done. The silence between them thickened. Then she asked, Why are you really helping me? He thought about it, because she reminded him of himself. Because watching her die while cowards like Voss rose felt like a betrayal of everything human. But what he said was simple. Because someone should. She stared at the cracked ceiling. They'll come back. I know. They won't let me live. I won't let you die. Another long pause. Then her voice cracked. They took everything. My name, my station, even my voice. Do you know what it's like to walk into a port and be spat on by people who once bowed to your family? Yes, Callum said quietly. Different world. Same pain. Her gaze softened, just barely. Then turned sharp again. They framed me. Voss and his lawyers. Forged transfer codes, intercepted transactions, even used my father's old blood seal to make it look like I owed them for tech upgrades. Let me guess, Callum said. The man they said you killed? His name was Darian Kale, he found out. Tried to help. They found his body in the irradiated zone, next to my plasma pistol. Callum felt something in him harden. Convenient. She nodded. I had no trial, no appeal. Just silence. Callum sat beside her. Then we take back your voice. How? We find proof. We broadcast it. Somewhere they can't shut it down. Her brow furrowed. You want to fight them? No, he said. I want to destroy them. She looked at him again, not with suspicion this time, but with the flicker of something that hadn't been there for days. Not trust, not yet, but possibility. Then a knock. Not a sound they expected, but real, echoing off the metal shelter wall. Callum rose fast. Weapon drawn, a voice called in low tones. Don't shoot. I'm not here for them. Callum opened the door slowly. A young man stood outside, holding a hand over a bleeding side wound. Uniform scuffed. Blaster scorched. It was the merc from before, the one who had looked away. I'm Corin, he said, breathless. I used to believe in Voss. Not anymore. Callum lowered his weapon. Astra pushed herself upright, eyes wary. Why are you here? She asked. Corin met her eyes. Because I saw the truth. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small cube, an encrypted holodrive. Voss keeps records. I've seen them. Logs, signed files. All fake, but the backups? They're real. Stored in his command vault at the old comm tower. Astra's breath caught. Then we can prove it. Corin nodded. But we'll only get one shot. Once he knows you're alive, he'll burn everything. Callum looked at Astra, then at Corin, then out into the sunlight. He saw the skiffs again, circling in the distance like vultures over a dying flame. No, he said. Not this time. This time we burn him first. The sun on Velis 9 was a hard white eye that never blinked. It burned everything it touched. The iron dust, the melted glass dunes, even the air itself, thin and hostile. Callum and Astra moved through it like ghosts of a world that had stopped believing in mercy. Corin led the way, half limping, half marching, a blood-stained strip of synth cloth wrapped tight around his ribs. Every few steps he glanced back, afraid that the horizon itself would start moving. Because on Velis 9 it sometimes did. Skiffs like hungry carrion, prowling for heat signatures. They'd been walking for hours before Callum spoke. You sure this comm vault still exists? Corin nodded. Voss uses the old communications tower on the ridge as his control post. Everything he owns, contracts, surveillance feeds, kill logs, it's all mirrored there. Locked behind a quantum key. He looked over at Astra. A key that recognizes your father's DNA pattern. Her breath caught. She stopped walking. My father. Her voice was quieter than the wind. He's been dead 5 years. Doesn't matter, Corin said. His bloodline's enough. The system will still think it's him. Callum looked at her. Then you're the key. Astra turned away. I was the reason he died. They found a hollow beneath an overhang of black glass rock, a pocket of shade just wide enough for 3 people. The air smelled of ozone and iron dust. Callum lowered his pack, pulling out the last of his water. Astra watched him divide it into 3 portions, one for each of them. She noticed he didn't drink until both she and Corin had. "You're kind," she said, almost to herself. "Never learn when to quit." "Humans?" he asked. She gave a small nod. "You keep fighting even when the universe already decided." He smiled faintly. "That's why we usually win." It wasn't arrogance in his voice, just a tired kind of faith. The kind that had kept species like his alive, long after logic said they shouldn't be. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Astra reached into her torn cloak and pulled out a fragment of metal the size of her palm, a crest plate etched with the symbol of House Velen. The edges were scorched, black. "My father used to wear this," she said. Said it wasn't a mark of power, it was a reminder. That leadership means being the last to eat and the first to bleed. Her thumb traced the charred emblem. He believed people were good. That justice was real. A bitter laugh escaped her. Voss proved him wrong. Callum took the crest gently, turning it so the light caught the ruined sigil. He wasn't wrong, he said. He just didn't live long enough to see the right people stand up. Astra's gaze flicked to him. "And you think you're one of them?" "I think I'm trying to be." Something in her expression softened, just a crack, just enough to let air in. Night came sudden on Valus 9, the heat bleeding away into cold that could freeze steel. They built a small plasma ember for warmth. Corin slept first, his pulse ragged but steady. Callum sat across from Astra, the blue firelight painting her skin in shades of amethyst. "You said your father saved you once," she murmured. "What did he do?" Callum stared into the flames. "After the Titan drift, I lost everything. My ship, my crew, my wife. I was scavenging in the Dust Belt when pirates caught me. Would have spaced me for fuel credits. Your father showed up in a repair hauler, claimed me as his worker to get me out alive. Didn't even know my name." Astra listened in silence. "He told me, everyone deserves one more chance than they think." Callum smiled faintly. "Guess I'm giving it back." Her eyes glistened, reflecting the flicker. "He used to say that to me when I failed flight drills." Callum looked up. "Then he'd be proud you're still standing." She shook her head. "He'd say I'm stubborn." Same thing. For the first time since he'd found her in the dust. She laughed, a broken, fragile sound, but alive. At dawn, they reached the ridge. The old communications tower loomed above them, a jagged skeleton of carbon steel and blinking antenna arrays. Power still hummed faintly through the structure, feeding off geothermal vents below. The entrance was guarded by automated sentries, spider drones with tracking lenses glowing red in the dim light. Corin knelt, fingers dancing over a handheld jammer. "Give me a second." There. The drones powered down, one after another, like candles snuffed by invisible wind. They slipped inside. The air smelled of rust and cold circuitry. Every wall pulsed faintly with green data veins. Somewhere deep inside, machines whispered, a chorus of memory. Callum's hand rested on his weapon as they moved deeper. Astra followed close, her breath slow and even, the training of her past life still in her bones despite starvation and loss. At the end of the corridor, a heavy door sealed with biolocks waited. "That's it," Corin whispered. "Voss's vault." Astra stepped forward. Her palm hovered over the scanner. The console flickered. Identity scan. Match. Matthias Valen Gene Strand. Access granted. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber filled with holographic record pillars. Thousands of files spun lazily in the air like frozen ghosts of data. Corin exhaled. "By the stars. It's all here." Astra moved forward, almost reverent. She reached toward one of the projections. Financial records, correspondence, transfer orders, all stamped with Voss's digital signature. Dozens were marked forged. Callum pulled a data core from his belt. "Let's copy everything." As he worked, Astra scrolled through the files. Then she froze. There, among the records, was a message labeled with her father's name. She opened it. A hologram bloomed, her father's face, flickering, weary but alive. "If you're seeing this, Astra, then Voss did what I feared. He's taken what isn't his. But listen to me. Truth has a way of surviving, even buried. Trust those who still believe in it. Find them, fight clean. And remember, Mercy is not weakness. The projection faded. Astra stood motionless, tears tracking down the dust on her cheeks. Callum closed the last of the data cores. He left you the path. She turned to him, voice trembling. He left me a war. Alarms exploded through the tower. Corin cursed. He knows we're here. Remote trip. He must have had motion sensors on the upper ridge. Red warning lights bathed the chamber. Callum grabbed the data cores and shoved one into Corin's hand. Take it and go. Get to the shuttle ruins. What about you? Corin asked. I'll slow them down. Astra stepped forward. No, we go together. Not this time, Callum said. They're coming for you, not me. You can clear your name if you live. I'll cover the exit. The door above burst open. Voss's men flooding in, pulse rifles blazing blue arcs across the corridor. Callum's blaster roared in answer, each shot echoing like thunder in the metal tomb. Corin dragged Astra toward the maintenance shaft, shouting over the din. He's buying us minutes, that's all. They dropped into darkness. Callum fired until his weapon overheated, until smoke filled his lungs. He saw Voss himself stride into view, shielded and smiling. You should have kept walking, human. Callum spat blood, raised the overheated gun again. Humans never walk when we can stand. The blast that followed lit the tower's interior like dawn, breaking through glass. Astra and Corin crawled through the vent shaft as the explosion shook the ridge. The world above screamed with collapsing metal. She wanted to turn back, to run to the man who had stood between her and death twice in 2 days. But Corin's hand caught hers. He knew what he was doing, he said, voice rough. Don't waste it. When they finally reached the open plain, the tower was a pillar of flame on the horizon, smoke curling upward into the starless sky. Astra sank to her knees, clutching the crest plate against her chest. The data core in her other hand pulsed softly, alive. Intact. Callum had made sure of it. Hours later, in the shelter of a shattered cargo dome, Corin broke the silence. You know he might still be alive, he said quietly. Humans don't die easy. Astra looked up at the horizon where the smoke still glowed. Her voice was almost a whisper. He's not like the others. He doesn't fight for himself. She looked at the stars then, cold, distant, endless. He fights because someone has to. The settlement of new auras shimmered like a mirage on the horizon, silver domes catching starlight, flickering neon signs marking the remains of civilization. From this distance it looked peaceful, beautiful, even, but beneath that shell was rot, and Commander Voss ruled it like a warlord cloaked in law. Astra, Corin, and the stolen truth Callum died to protect were moving straight into his lion's den. They reached the outskirts just before dawn, using the dry reactor trenches to hide their movements. Astra limped, breath shallow, the weight of Callum's absence dragging at every step. But she didn't fall behind. Not once. We go to Ruth first, Corin whispered. Who's Ruth? Astra asked, her voice rasped from dust and grief. Matthias Valen's old ledger clerk, Corin replied. She left when Voss took over. If anyone has duplicates of the old deeds, it's her, but she's under watch. Astra's eyes narrowed. Then we get her out. Ruth lived in a low pod house on the eastern edge of the colony, surrounded by broken soil and synthetic fence wire. The lights inside were dim. 2 men sat outside, Voss's mercs, bored, smoking stim sticks, pretending they weren't guarding a prisoner. Corin pointed toward the back alley. We go around. No alarms. Astra touched his arm. Not yet. What? We do this my way. Corin didn't argue. They waited until the guards turned to talk. Then Astra walked straight toward the front door. State your business, one of the guards barked, standing. Astra didn't flinch. You know who I am. Both men froze. The one on the left instinctively reached for his weapon, but her voice sliced the silence. If Voss wanted me dead, I wouldn't be standing in front of you. They hesitated. Behind them, Ruth's door opened. The woman who stepped out was older now. Hair silver, shoulders straighter than they should have been for her age. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Astra! Astra stepped forward. I need your help. Ruth pulled her inside without another word. The guards glanced at each other but didn't follow. Inside, the room was sparse, books stacked in corners, an old plasma kettle humming. Corin entered through the back moments later, breathless. Ruth stared at Astra like she was seeing a ghost. I thought you were dead. I was close. What happened to... Callum's gone, Astra said softly. Ruth's lips tightened. Then we don't have much time. She moved fast. In minutes, she pulled up a floor panel and retrieved a reinforced container. Inside, paper copies, holographic tags, even an old blood seal matrix. Your father made me copy everything, Ruth whispered. He suspected Voss was planning something. Said if anything ever happened to him, you'd need these. Astra touched the documents like holy scripture. Her hands shook. This is enough to bring Voss down. It's not just that, Ruth added, sliding a second chip across the table. I've been keeping a journal. Every conversation, every order Voss gave. Things he did to silence people. Threats, bribes. Corin plugged the chip into his portable reader. His eyes widened. This is everything. A knock at the door froze them, Ruth whispered. Back window, now. Astra grabbed the satchel and slipped through with Corin. Behind them, they heard Ruth's calm voice at the front door. What do you want at this hour? They didn't wait to hear the answer. 10 minutes later, they reached the center of New Auras, the broadcast cathedral, a massive dome retrofitted into the old comms relay system. It still transmitted colony-wide feeds every cycle, including the morning announcements and ceremonial reports. Astra looked at Corin. This is it. You know Voss will be here. Then let him hear me. They waited until just before the morning bell. Then, as the crowd began gathering for the ceremony, Astra stepped onto the dais. Guards shouted. Corin locked the doors behind them, using a stolen override baton. The audience inside froze. Workers, families, vendors, all staring at the dust-covered woman on stage. Astra stood tall, the satchel in her hands. My name is Astra Valen, she said. Her voice echoing from wall to wall, the crowd murmured. Some gasped. Others whispered, she's alive. Astra continued. I was framed, cast out, left to die in the wastes while a criminal took everything from my family. But I did not die, I lived, and I brought the truth with me. She opened the satchel and placed the documents on the center podium. Ruth's journal, her father's deeds, the death order logs, everything, Voss forged contracts, bought witnesses. He killed my father's steward and blamed me. He enslaved this colony with lies and silence. But not anymore. The side doors exploded open. Commander Voss stormed in, blaster drawn. His face was pale, lips twisted with rage. She's lying, he shouted. That woman is a traitor. Arrest her! No one moved. Corin stepped between Astra and Voss, holding the reader. This chip contains everything, he said. You want to shoot her, Commander? Do it. Right here in front of every settler. But you better shoot me too. And the people watching outside. And the judge once he sees this data feed. Voss hesitated. His blaster hand trembled. The audience stared. Then a farmer near the front, a man with burn scars and welding goggles, stepped forward. I lost my land 2 years ago. Voss said it was due to contamination. Said it was protocol. A woman added, my son disappeared after testifying. Said he was sent off-world for protection. Dozens of voices rose piece by piece, and like stone cracking under pressure, Voss's power began to collapse. You don't understand. Voss shouted. I built this settlement. I brought order. You built it on blood, Astra said. But we remember what justice feels like. Voss screamed and raised his weapon. But Corin fired first. The blast hit Voss in the shoulder, spinning him back into the floor. He dropped the blaster, gasping. Trying to reach for a comlink. He never got the chance. 3 settlers tackled him, then 4 more. Voss disappeared beneath a wave of hands and fury. The rest happened fast. The crowd seized the guards. Ruth arrived with other townsfolk carrying the backup logs. The transmission dome was turned into a court. A traveling arbiter from the Rim circuit, already en route, was contacted through emergency channels. Corin handed off the chip. Astra, silent now, watched it all from a bench in the back of the dome. Her hands still gripped the satchel like it might vanish if she let go. Then someone sat beside her. She turned slowly. Callum, bloodied, bruised, burned, but alive. He gave her a half smile. Told you I wasn't dying easy, Her breath caught. She didn't speak, just leaned into him, and for the first time in 5 years, she let herself feel safe. Dawn broke differently on Velis 9 that day. It bled over the colony's silver domes in slow waves of pale gold, touching the dust, the steel, and the wounds of a settlement that had lived too long in silence. But now something had changed. Truth had been spoken. The air carried it, and for the first time in 5 years, Astra Velan stood on her family's land, not as a fugitive, but as its rightful heir. She watched from the terrace of her father's old biodome, where vines once twisted up the glass and children played beneath solar trees. The soil was cracked, but beneath it, her family's legacy still pulsed. It would grow again. Behind her, Callum stepped out of the living chamber, his coat dusty, his hands stained from rebuilding the filtration units. He stopped beside her, not speaking yet. They both listened to the wind. "He would have loved this," Astra said quietly. "Your father?" Callum asked. She nodded, arms crossed. "He always believed in things before they existed. Said faith is like planting seeds in a desert, stupid until it works." Callum chuckled. "Sounds like something he'd say." A long silence passed between them. Then Astra turned to face him. Her eyes, no longer sunken or shadowed, met his with something slow burning and sure. "I never thanked you," she said. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." She took a breath. "For staying. For not walking away when I told you to. For believing in me, when I couldn't stand the sight of myself." Callum looked at her, something shifting behind his worn expression. "You didn't need saving, Astra. You just needed someone to stand beside you while you saved yourself." Her mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. "Well, you're lucky I didn't stab you that first day," he smirked. "You tried. I meant to." They stood close now. Not out of necessity, not out of danger, but out of something unspoken that had grown in the ashes between them. Respect, pain, a bond forged in fire and silence. Behind them, the dome hummed with life. Ruth had returned to manage the land's records. Corin had taken over training the new security corps, young settlers who now believed truth was worth fighting for. The corrupted marshal had been removed. Voss was awaiting trial in a system with real judges, and the settlers had voted to rename the colony Velas, after the woman who returned from the dead. Astra walked with Callum through the lower fields, what used to be oxygen gardens. They passed rows of hydroflakes, dormant for years but still fertile. She crouched, running her fingers through the soil. "He thought the land could heal anything," she said softly. "That it remembers." Callum crouched beside her. "Maybe it does." He handed her a seed pod, small, preserved, sealed in the box she had hidden away all those years ago. She hadn't even realized he'd found it. She looked at him. "You kept this?" He nodded. "Some things are worth holding on to." She stared at the seed for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she pressed it into the dirt. They both covered it with soil. "I don't know what happens next," she said. Callum rose, offered her a hand. "Then let's find out." She took it. That night, they sat atop the biodome's highest point, the stars above clear and sharp, twin moons drifting over the horizon. Astra leaned against him. Head on his shoulder. "You ever going to leave?" she asked. "No," she tilted her head up. "Why not?" He looked down at her. "Because you're here." Her breath caught, but not from surprise. "From relief. Then stay," she whispered. "But not as a guest. Not as a helper, as someone I can build with, someone who reminds me that I'm not just surviving anymore." He nodded. Not a vow, just a promise. In the distance, crops flickered under irrigation lights. Children ran between rebuilt housing pods. The wind carried laughter. The sound of settlers laying bricks, welding fences. Planting futures, Astra and Callum sat in silence, watching the rebirth of a world once left for dead. She didn't need his pity. She needed him to believe, and he had. Now, she could finally believe in herself again, not because of what was lost, but because of what they were building together.